You don't have to read it, just buy it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about cyber espionage. I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 topics. How bad it is, why I think it's going to get much worse, and what we need to do if we're going to stop it or control it. A response that is more serious than we have made today without significantly changing current law. So how bad is it now? I almost feel like everybody here knows how bad it is. There's nothing classified about it. The Dalai Lama network attack is still basically what's happening to all of us. People get into your network by sending you an email that you want to open. You open the email. Your security system has no objection to it, but in fact, it compromises your network, and the attackers upload equipment into your network, into your computer. It turns on your camera. It watches you at your desk. It listens, turns on your mic and listens to you at your desk. It records your every keystroke so it knows what you're thinking as you formulate the thoughts. It is the full 1984 package, except you had to buy the equipment. That's bad. Okay, so why do I think it's going to get worse? First, because the people who are doing this, mostly large states, have mainly used it for a couple of purposes. They're doing espionage against the US government, well, duh, you sort of expect that. And they're doing it against a number of companies that have state-sponsored competitors. And mostly what they do is they look for the low-hanging fruit for intelligence, which is, I'm going to have a negotiation with these guys. Can you find out what their negotiating position is and what their bottom line is? And that is routinely extracted from the networks of companies and their corporate advisors, like law firms like mine. That's one thing. And the other thing is they look for big secrets, you know, really cool technology we can steal that we can use, give to our state-sponsored companies who will build competitive products. Those are obvious and effective and very dangerous things that are happening right now, but it will get worse. I've spent time in the intelligence community. The more time you spend with a particular intelligence capability, the more the customer comes to understand what that capability is, the more they can fine-tune what they want the intelligence collectors to get for them. So they aren't just going to be getting negotiating positions and big technology. What they want to know is, who are your salesmen calling on next week? And what do they think those prospects want? And what prices are they going to be offering them so that they can get in there beforehand or after with a slightly better offer, so that they have hollowed out every tactical advantage you have in the marketplace. That's going to happen as state-sponsored enterprises learn to task the collectors effectively. That's bad, but it's going to be worse. And Rachel is a perfectly appropriate sponsor for this, because, you know, totalitarianism is mostly dead outside of North Korea. And instead, we have a whole bunch of authoritarian governments that have had to work within a kind of quasi-open system in which they don't have total control of the information, but they have an enormous amount of information about their users, about who's online, who's doing what, and they've learned to more or less achieve their goals in a context of something that resembles a democratic, open exchange of information. Those tools, the tools they've learned to kind of work within a veneer of democracy, are exactly the tools they can use against real democracies to change the debates that we have, to punish people who say things that they don't like. We actually heard General Hayden say, you know, I'd like to make sure my computer worked tonight. Maybe I shouldn't say this. Now, that was mostly a joke, but imagine if we knew that people were listening, and that when we went home tonight, we would pay a price depending on what we said in terms of being able to get online and communicate, or whether our refrigerator had been turned off remotely or not. Any number, mine gets turned off by the power company on a regular basis these days, but the idea that people can be punished in fine-tuned ways is increasingly going to be part of the mechanisms by which other countries control the democracies that they are contending with. And not just that. You know, last campaign was the first one in which it was acknowledged that both campaigns had been compromised by foreign espionage services. As far as we know, nothing happened with that, but you know, most countries know which party they want to have win the next election. So what's going to stop a country that actually is confident about its ability to read this country and the campaign from deciding that one campaign won't have secrets? Well, I remember DebateGate when it was thought that Jimmy Carter's debate preparation materials had gone to Ronald Reagan. It was a disaster. Everybody was very upset about it. Imagine that happening on a regular basis because one country would prefer that one party win that election. We can't really stop that on current technology. So this will get worse as people get better and more confident about using cyber espionage as a tool to influence governments. You know, if you're like me, that makes you deeply unhappy and eager to do something about it. So what can we do? And here I would say, first, one thing that isn't going to work is defending our networks is not going to solve our problems. So we can defend our networks so the cows come home. As General Hayden said, all the advantages are with the offense. They will get in, and if we are counting just on defense, we're toast. So what do we have to do? You know, there's a really interesting bit of kind of psychobiology that in which it's actually been tested, and a reward center has been found in the human brain that fires when people punish others at great cost to themselves for violating the rules. So there's an elaborate study where they give somebody money and they let him send it next door, and if the other guy stiffs him, they give him more money and let him pay that to hurt the other guy, so it costs him money to hurt the other guy, and people do that willingly, and if you put them in an MRI, you can see their reward center fire. You don't really need all of that. You just need to drive in Washington for 2 days and you see that. But it is a challenge to people who believe that Darwin was right. How is it that we have a biological mechanism for requiring us to take action that hurts us just to hurt somebody else? That does not make evolutionary sense unless you believe that the human evolutionary advantage, the thing that made us successful, was our ability to form groups and enforce the rules inside that group so that we could engage in large-scale social organization, which I think is in fact the case. So we have got to find ways to punish people who violate the rules that we choose to enforce as part of our society. And the answer we get from the intelligence community when we say, punish these guys, is, whoa, we can't find them, we don't know who they are, we can't attribute this. I'm gonna argue, and this is the first of my solutions, that's wrong. We know a lot about these guys. As we have watched them in our networks, we've learned a lot about them. We've found some of their intermediate servers where they're downloading stuff. We find information about them. We know whether they learned on Linux or Windows. We know whether they're left-handed or right-handed. We know what their tactics are. We know what hours they work. Turns out it's 9 to 5 Beijing time. We know a lot about these guys. Yeah. Yeah, it is a short day. I'm surprised. What we haven't been able to do is actually track this back because we don't know enough about the environment in which they're operating. We can't find them. We can just find these clues to who they are, but we can't find them out in the real world. And so my first suggestion is, you know, if somebody is going to conduct massive, indiscriminate cyber espionage against everybody in the United States, it's time to say, you know, that's what we're going to do for you too. Your country, we want to map your social graph for you. We'll kind of keep it in our classified systems, but we're going to try to compromise every computer in your country, every smartphone in your country, extract all of the data about who those folks are interacting with, and then match it up with what we already know about the attackers to see if we can't put a name and a face and a phone number on the people who are attacking us. I think this is doable. We're not doing it. So that's one thing we could do to find the collectors. A second thing that I would suggest we think about doing is unleashing some of the private sector resources that I see in my practice. I advise companies that have been hacked like this, and they, 3/4 of the time or more, they find out not because they find the hackers in their networks, but because somebody from the US government shows up and says, by the way, we found a terabyte of your data halfway across the Pacific. And then they start looking and they find something, and they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a month trying to figure out all the places these guys are, and then they come in one weekend, it's a big spasm of activity. They try to stop up every rat hole and throw the guys off the network, which lasts until some idiot in the organization opens another spearphishing email. So it is an endless and unproductive effort to defend their way out of this problem. They would be delighted to go tracking back these collectors, to hack back into systems that the attackers are using. And they would spend their money to figure out who's getting their stuff. Now, that's illegal. Only problem, it's illegal for a private sector person to do. It's not illegal for the US government to do. We do that all the time. But we don't have, frankly, the resources to pursue every single act of corporate espionage enabled by cyber attacks that occurs. And so there's a wonderful, peanut butter chocolate moment here. The US government has the authorities. The private sector that is under attack has the funds. Why not bring those two together and let certain kinds of private investigations of attacks occur under US government supervision, but using resources provided by the private sector? That's the second thing we could be doing about tracking collectors and finding ways to punish them. Two more, and then I'll stop. Different target. We're really focused on the collectors, the guys who are breaking into our systems and taking our stuff. And it's pretty aggravating. But the fact is that, stealing stuff, and again, this comes out of the intelligence community, stealing secrets is no great shakes unless you've got somebody who can actually use it, a consumer who really wants it and will use it effectively. So who are the consumers at the other end of this massive indiscriminate attack, a cyber espionage attack on US companies and the US government? Well, in many cases, these are going to have to be, for this intelligence to be any damn good at all, these parties are going to have to be consumers of intelligence. And that's something that we can do much more of. Let's see. We can sanction consumers who have engaged in intelligence gathering by saying these consumers are a better target than the collectors themselves. If we can find a way to get at the consumers and hurt them, then we're going to do a much better job of punishing people for their misdeeds. Now, what kind of sanctions can we impose? Well, one thing we can do is we can impose trade sanctions on the consumers, the companies who are actually using this information. So private sector, state-sponsored entities are going to be the people who are using this intelligence, and we need to find them. If we find them, first, their defenses will be less good than the collectors because they're in business. They're not in the collection business. They're in the oil business or the high-speed rail business. So if we can find ways to break into their system, it's going to be easier than breaking into the systems of the collectors. Second, those state-sponsored enterprises that are using this information have to use it outside of their home country. They're going to be taking that to other countries. They're going to be engaging in business in other countries, which means that they're subject to the legal regimes of other countries. So that you can say, if I can find the evidence that these consumers were using cyber espionage to gain a foothold in a market or to beat out a competitor, that ability to identify the attacker and then punish them by imposing sanctions in other countries or by bringing lawsuits will enable us to actually increase the damage, the harm, the punishment that we impose on people who are attacking us through cyber espionage. So there are 3, 4 very real things we could do tomorrow to engage in punishment of people who have used cyber espionage against the United States. Why don't I stop there?